If you're a real estate investor, you've heard it. It's a relationship-based business, but nowhere is that more true than when you're working with brokers. The problem is most real estate investors show up only when they want something. They ghost, overpromise, or they come off as being flaky, and brokers, they just don't forget it. In this episode, John and I are going to be breaking down how you can earn trust, build real relationships with brokers, and become the kind of buyer who gets the first call when a great deal is coming to the market or before it even goes live as well. John, it's great to be here with you.
So good to be here, Mark. That's the number one lesson I've learned in business. It's all about relationships, right? And, building and maintaining strong relationships across, even when it's maybe a relationship that's ending, maybe a vendor you've chosen no longer to do business with, but leaving gracefully and still making the people feel good. You never know what comes in the future, right? And in this context, brokers are so important to the success of a multifamily operator. Sometimes we hear about off-market deals, but the reality is off-market deals are still typically brokered through a broker at the end of the day, right? It's just, are you easy to work with? Are you somebody that's high trust, that they like, that they want to put you on that short list to get those opportunities? And so, of the 5 transactions we've closed, 3 of them have been off market, right? And so, we've accomplished that very quickly. So what we're going to dive into today are some of the key lessons you could implement if you're an operator or even just an investor who's looking for a 4 or 8 unit, building, or heck, even maybe just a single family rental, right? Just these relationships are super critical. So looking forward to diving in.
Yeah, and John, just before we do, I think context is really helpful here for the listeners, and or if you're watching on YouTube, is that when brokers, especially when you get into larger unit counts, like the 100 unit plus deals, is that brokers get thousands and thousands of inquiries. And you got to imagine that like majority of people that are reaching out to them are not real buyers, or they don't have the ability to actually purchase the property. And so, John, that's where when you and I first started going around and meeting brokers, I remember this one group. There were 2 agents. We went to the office. I know we were just talking about it before the call here.
Yeah.
And they were like, these guys were like sizing us up. They were not nice at all. They were like, I was like, holy geez, we walked out of there and I felt like these guys just totally, they were like staring us down. It was like almost we were doing them a disservice by sitting there.
Yeah.
And I remember after feeling like, oh my goodness, like these guys, like they just like they were horrible. And we basically went in, we handled ourselves really well. But now that I look back at it, I have further context that these guys, they have to go through so many people to find the real buyers. And so they've been raked through the coals. They're having all these conversations. People are saying one thing and they're not being able to deliver it. So now I have like certain empathy for, these brokers that are like stone cold because they've had, years and years of people saying one thing, not doing another, and like a very small percentage of like the real buyers. So I think context is really good going in this conversation, that with brokers specifically building relationships, this what we're just about to go through here, it's important to know where they're coming from. So if they rip you on the first conversation, it's not anything personal. Is that they've had thousands of conversations with flaky buyers that have wasted their time, so they don't have time to screw around. So I think
Yeah.
setting the stage of where the broker is coming from, putting yourself in their shoes, is like so important in this conversation.
That's right. And a cool ending, I guess, in a sense of that story is now those 2 guys send us deals directly
Yeah,
because,
yeah,
we
right.
performed on our first deal and, we followed back up and we met them actually in a more comfortable environment, actually in like the coffee shop in the office complex they work in. And, I hear from them on a regular basis, like they're reaching out to us. What are you guys up to? I got some stuff
Yeah.
coming. So, it was
Yeah,
one of those things I
that's
actually
nice.
look back on it fondly because it actually helped us do better on our, subsequent meetings because,
Yeah.
we were prepared, thankfully. But I
Yeah.
do remember that one guy was just like mad dogging us the whole
Well,
time.
Mad Dog, that's the snake guy. I was like, just stared at him. I'm like,
Yeah, I was
holy
like,
jeez,
ooh,
this guy.
geez.
I think
Yeah.
we're gonna get into a little hockey fight here type thing, right? Oh,
That's right.
man.
But
Yeah.
it's so true. And I mean, look, I think the world, unfortunately, sometimes is full of talkers and, far fewer doers, right? So, for us, I think a couple of things come to mind. It's being fast and decisive, right? So when a broker sends you a deal, we have a rule at Faris Capital Partners. I mean, it's like set in stone. We always provide feedback, even if it's, hey, this doesn't meet the vintage we look for, or looks like a great deal, but not for us based on this. Maybe it's a tax credit deal or a low income housing deal. That's just not something in our buy box. But we try to provide something of value. So they go, even though it wasn't for them, they gave me a little nugget I could take back to my seller, or I just know now I need to refine the stuff I send to, the Faris Capital team because I've learned from that feedback that they've given. So like a no is even better than ghosting them, right? At the end of the day. The reality of today's market is the majority of deals these guys markets do not transact. And often the deals that even go under contract don't close. And so they're going through a lot right now. So just being aware of that, right? Like I think having the empathy for the position they're in, the market's challenged. Sellers are listing deals overpriced. Once again, operators are putting deals under contract and they're not getting the capital raise or they're not getting approved for their loans. So, we don't want to be like tire kickers here. Like if we're showing absolute interest in a deal, it's because it's real. Like we're not just kicking tires, in other words, and we analyze fast and give a real answer quickly. And that goes such a long way. It's interesting. We actually had a team member, Mark, you'll remember, who started, and it was interesting. He was from the brokerage world. And, he told us brokers don't want, operators walking around their office, like they got plenty of stuff going on. And you and I just firmly disagreed with that. And I'll just put it this way, that person's no longer on the team because it was just a cultural mismatch because of some of these ideas that were ingrained in him. And what I found is that the brokers love it when you come by and you share some insights, talk through some of the deals we've done and share challenges and just talk like human beings. It's all about that relationship. So that goes back to one of the next tips. It's showing up in person often. So when we're in a market, we try to meet brokers face to face every time, even if it's just a quick 20-minute coffee, or we stop by their office and drop off a few Yeti mugs with our full out logo on it. We tour deals that maybe aren't perfect, but we make sure they know that we're saying, hey, this one's kind of like a vintage that we're not 100% on, but there are some things we like. We'd love to take a tour. Are you good with that? Right. Because what we're really doing is building rapport and once again, helping them see more clearly the kind of deals we like. But never underestimate the power of just a lunch, coffee, or an office visit. If you're in their city, they should know you're there and that you're coming by.
Yeah, 100%. So we got being fast, decisive, and clear. Second, we got show up in person. So this is like it sets you apart from the other operators because you got to imagine that there are people calling from all over North America, right? And so if you're there in person, it means okay, these guys are serious, and so that's really good. And then the next is following through on everything. So if you say you're going to do it, do it. If you
Mhm.
say you're going to send an email by the end of the day, making sure you're doing it. But when you say something and then don't deliver, it creates question marks in them. And
That's right.
so this is something, John, you and I mean, we've the benefit, we didn't say this for further context in this conversation, is that you and I are both brokers. If you're listening to the podcast for the first time, it's like we've sold thousands and thousands of properties. So we have context actually being in the shoes of these investment brokers as well. And so when you speak and do on an ongoing basis, that builds further credibility and trust when there's a buyer that's actually coming in. And when they're making the decision, who do I want to be able to give this off market deal to, or who do I want to be communicating? You got to realize that brokers keep a short list of their most important buyers. They're buyers that they believe will actually fall through. So speak and do, and we'll be able to actually close on these deals. So following through on everything you say you're going to do is so, so important.
For sure. I would say reputation is earned and destroyed in the small stuff,
Yeah.
forgetting to
Yeah.
do what you say you're going to do, or, or doing what you say you're going to do in the alternative. So, providing helpful and honest feedback is another one. I sort of touched on that earlier, but, while you're passing, but do it constructively. Sometimes we see deals, Mark, that are so dramatically overpriced, you almost wonder why the broker took it, but we don't say it so bluntly. We just say, hey, based on our analysis, this is the price that we're coming to with our underwriting criteria. As you know, this is the kind of deal we like, and this is how we look at deals. So it just might not be a great fit for us, but this is what we're seeing. And it's amazing because what will often happen is the broker comes back and goes, yeah, I know. That's the price we had too. This is what the seller wanted to list it for.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, now we've given them some, ammunition. So, as they move through the process, they can say, hey, we've actually gotten feedback from 20 different buyers and they're all saying the same thing, right? We asked the question, like, should we submit at that price? We don't want to offend you or your seller, but this is where we're at. If we like the deal, but we're a couple million off, should we submit? And so getting into the details on why our underwriting is coming in differently than theirs just gives them, once again, ammunition, and is just helpful in that trust building and that rapport. It's not just saying it's a pass. It's a pass because of these factors, and here's why. And it just goes back to, that's knowledge they can maybe share with the seller, or even just share with a future seller. Hey, we just marketed the deal just like this, and this was the result. So I really encourage you to price it here if you're interested in selling. So the more value you provide, the more value the brokers will return, is how we think about it.
Yeah, 100%. And this is last but not least. It's definitely not the least. This is at the
Yeah.
top of the
Way all
list.
the way
Okay,
up.
so
Yeah.
here's what it is. So it's just, I'm going to set the stage. You're selling let's say a $20 million building. Okay. And so you got to realize that if the broker is taking, let's just say a 3% commission on that, you got to realize that that's like 600 grand in potential commission. Let's just use that as an example. I got my math right, John?
You did.
Okay, so 600 grand. If they award you the deal and you come back and you do not close before closing date, and say it goes back on market, the seller gets upset at the broker and said, you recommended going with this buyer. I'm going to now list with somebody else. And that brokerage loses that listing. You got to realize, like, you might think that the broker might be a little bit upset at that buyer that pulled out,
Oh
that
yeah.
wasn't able to close. That's like 600 grand. Like these aren't small deals. These are massive deals. And so the broker, when they're really, you have to build such trust that they're gonna suggest to the sellers, like, okay, I'm putting my trust in this buyer that they're gonna be able to meet their obligations. And if they don't, they're at a risk of losing that potential deal. And so this is where the ability to actually close becomes so important, because if you don't, this is one thing that we learned, John, as we got more and more in, is that unlike, say, the residential side, the commercial space is so interconnected right across North America, is that, companies and brokers all speak to each other. And if there's a group that doesn't follow through and close, all of a sudden they're like blacklisted, especially
Yeah.
if they do it in a way that is not, we'll just say the broker didn't like it. Right. And
Yeah.
so this is a big one, John. I'd say, this is the last point, but it should definitely be at the first. But we left it last so we could really punch it home that
Yeah.
when you're going into a deal, have the right intent. You're not just going in and wasting people's time. You're doing your due diligence up front as much as you can do before the inspection, and you have a real intent, and you believe you have the ability to be able to say, yes, award it to me, I'm going to follow through. And by doing that, that's what builds more trust, where you get better and better deals as time goes on.
Well, Mark, just to summarize that point, because you nailed it, but we've actually been told by brokers that we won deals where our offer was a few $100,000 less than the other two offers. But the reputation of that operator was such that the
Yeah.
broker advised their seller to move forward with us, because we've closed 100% of the deals we put under contract. We've only ever renegotiated when there was major issues discovered that nobody knew about until we started, digging, around and really getting into the property. And so that reputation is so critical in this business. So yeah, so to summarize, right, it's all about those relationships. So if you're interested in learning more about what we do here at Faris Capital Partners, maybe as Mark pointed out earlier, this is the first episode you've listened to, we highly encourage you to go to fulloutinvesting.com. It's a great resource. We have a sample deal. We have a video on there that walks you through exactly what we do to ensure success with these investments. And you can book a time to call and talk with us at any time. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe and like and share with other high net worth individuals and investors. We would love to get any introductions that you might have. We love and believe in you guys. Keep dreaming and investing big.